Okay, this is some fungal hyphae and healthy compost. Microfungi rise as a filament, so it doesn't explain what that is. This is the little filaments right there. So microorganism functions, they liquefy minerals, convert non-organic compounds into organic, amino acids, organic acids, enzymes, hormones. They're the start of everything. That cycle of life goes back to that wheel. The plants feed the soil. 27% of plant biomass that goes back into the soil in its lifetime. So why is it doing that? It's trying to feed the microorganisms. It wants healthy microorganisms so it has something to grow off of. So it's doing the same thing. It's farming the soil for itself. Microorganisms feed the plants. Both can produce what the other cannot. They have a symbiotic relationship. Deep digestion, from 12 inches to a few yards deep. Okay, earthworms are extremely important. Their castings are significant sources of organic fertilizer. Their tunnels allow air, which support that aerobic bacteria we talked about, water to go deep into the soil. So that allows the water to be soaked up in the soil, which provides water for aquifers and stuff like that, which cycles the air and water. The roots of the plants will follow nutrient-rich wormholes. So even some of the roots of the plants will start to follow those wormholes and it's in them. You guys are hungry? You can eat some of those. So they consume decaying organic matter throughout the soil. They leave behind rich casings as organic fertilizer from the mycorrhizas. In the average acre, there's about 10 to 15 tons of castings per year produced by these earthworms. So you can kind of see how important those things are. Friend Sykes, who mentioned him earlier, about castings. A highly fertile mixture of soil nutrients and plant food. Because of its solubility, is immediately assimilable to the plants growing on the land. It will therefore be seen that the earthworm is the most important cultivator on the whole farm. Its populations under all circumstances must be maintained and no active husbandry must ever be indulged which would diminish its number. Okay, so we're going to talk about genetic potential of the plant. So a plant has an optimal chance to express its genetic strengths when it's taken care of nutritionally, like what we're talking about here. It also suppresses its genetic weaknesses, just like you and me. Okay, I'm just going to mention this real quick. This is a little bit off the subject, but it's very interesting. Epi-Genetics is Epi stands for above, so genetics, above genetics. It's a new science to study how genes turn off and on. You know, we figured out the human genome. We figured we were going to have all this information we could use, and we figured out that it was much more complicated than what we thought. And this is a study of how these genes are turned off and on and off. And it's controlled by nutrition. Okay, so when somebody says they have a genetic disease, if they had had perfect nutrition throughout their entire life, would they have had that genetic disease? Would that disease have been expressed?
To give you a little history of conventional farming, if you go back to the turn of the century, it was about the time of World War I, farmers were starting to get economic pressures to produce certain crops. Prior to this, they would rotate crops, where they would put one crop in that would take out a certain nutrient and would replenish another. And through this, they were able to keep the soils healthy. Well, once they started farming the same soil with the same crop, they would deplete the soils. And this was about the time of World War I, and during World War I, they were producing the chemical factories were producing explosives, and they were producing gases that were like nerve gas and mustard gas and stuff like that. It was very easy for them to convert these factories into producing fertilizer, which was similar in chemistry makeup. And through the fertilizer factories, they would produce nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And so at the turn of the century, they realized that if they just put this nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in the soil, that plants would grow, and therefore they could intensively farm the same crop. Okay, and so as you can see with what we talked about with soil science is much more complicated than simple nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And so basically, when you grow crops with fertilizer that's only nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, you grew a deficient crop. It's basically like a steroid given to a bodybuilder. That plant is not going to be healthy, and because of that, this unhealthy plant, Mother Nature's job is to basically go in and get rid of that plant. And the way that she does that is through insects and through competition with other plants. And so Mother Nature will go in there and basically destroy it. Well, and humans think, well, if we can basically kill the plants and competition, if we can kill the insects that are competing against our plants, then we can continue to grow these deficient plants in these deficient soils.
So what do? We start putting fertilizers, pesticides, fungicides down. So intensive farming, there's a lack of crop rotation. One plant will take out a nutrient, another will replace it. The minerals and nutrients are depleted soils. In 1945, 200,000 pounds of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and rodenticides were sprayed in the U.S. Okay? In 2000, 2 billion pounds of this garbage was sprayed. And we've doubled crop losses. So what does that mean? Is NPK enough to provide the nutrients that these plants need? Okay, NPK is a salt. What happens to earthworms when you put salt on them? Romans used to salt the fields. So when a Roman would conquer a group, it would salt the fields, because if you destroy the fields, the group can't eat, and then they're dependent upon you. So bird traffic was over these fields that is produced by with chemical fertilizers reduced by 40 to 60%. And the reason is because you kill the earthworms. What's the point of eating crap foods what's the point of supplements if you're eating crap foods? Paul Chek says you can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. But it makes sense, right? A lot of these supplement companies are owned by the same companies who produce it, or the pharmaceutical companies. And current research shows that synthetic vitamins are treated like a drug by the liver. Most vitamins in nature come in a package. They're not just a vitamin. In fact, you can't remove a substance and call it that vitamin. There's many, many complex substances or chemicals that are inside that we have no idea what they do. Okay, factory farming. This is actually an excerpt from Paul's article, "You Are What You Eat: Animal Products." I think this is kind of interesting to know. Some commercial meat producers have been researching trials adding cardboard, newspaper, and sawdust to cattle feeding programs to reduce costs. Some factory farms scrape up manure from chicken houses and pig pens and add it back into the chicken feed. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, cement dust may become a particularly attractive feed supplement in the future because it produces a 30% faster weight gain than cattle on regular feed. Food and Drug Administration officials say it's not uncommon for some feedlot operators to mix industrial sewage and oils into soy feed to reduce costs and fatten animals more quickly. So why would industrial sewage and oils make an animal fat? If you have a toxin in your body, it's usually stored in fat. Your body will sequester it into the fat of your body. And so that's how we fatten these animals, is we give them these chemicals, and these chemicals make them fat because they're trying to store these chemicals away from their body. They're trying to do the same thing our bodies do. There are numerous reports of animal cruelty emanating from investigations of factory farming. I was going to show you some examples that really you guys should see. It's pretty disgusting if you watch some of those videos. I wish you could have seen them. Many factory farm animals are raised in giant barns. It's common that they never see the natural light of day. They are fed a constant supply of antibiotics to aid in rapid growth and keep them alive, as they literally live their entire lives in their own feces. 70 years ago, steers were 4 to 5 years old in slaughter. In the 50s, they were 2 to 3 years old. Today, steers are accelerating from 80 pounds to 1,200 pounds in 12 to 14 months. So how do factory farmers do it? You may wonder they use enormous quantities of corn and grain. And both these things are not designed for cattle. I mean, they have 5 stomachs, and they're designed to ferment and eat cellulose, which is that fiber we were just talking about earlier that we can't digest ourselves. And they provide it, and they turn it into nutrients and nutrients and protein for us. So protein supplementation and drugs, including hormones, growth hormones. These animals are literally living the drug life of a modern bodybuilder without the exercise, and you're eating them. Okay. In 1998, the USDA inspectors and safety system reclassified an array of animal diseases as being diseases that rarely or never present a direct public health risk, except unaffected carcasses and portions could be passed on to consumers by cutting out lesions. Among animal diseases the agency said won't present a health danger are cancer, hersiculitis, which is pneumonia of poultry, glandular swelling or lymphoma, sores, infectious arthritis, disease caused by intestinal worms, tumors. The guidelines states remove localized lesions and pass unaffected carcass portions.